Welcome to Twilight Fables, where we tell stories for you to sleep, but not the kind you remember from childhood. Tonight, we dust off the familiar glass slipper and sweep back the curtains on a tale you thought you knew. You were told Cinderella was about kindness, magic, and happily ever after. But not all pumpkins hide fairy tales, and not all wishes come without a price. What if the stroke of midnight didn't end a spell, but awakened something ancient, something watching from beneath the cinders? Settle in, let the shadows rise. This is Cinderella, as you've never heard it before. The fire had long since died, yet the ashes still breathed. Grey motes hovered in the air, suspended like forgotten whispers. Ella sat where she always did, in the corner of the kitchen, near the hearth that no longer warmed. Her fingers, calloused and dust-streaked, were busy scrubbing the same patch of floor she'd been cleaning for the past hour, not because it needed it, but because that was what was expected. That was what kept her unseen. She had long ago stopped being a person in the eyes of her stepmother and stepsisters. She was simply the girl in the ashes now, Cinderella, a name once spoken with affection, had turned into something else entirely, something sharp, something meant to slice. Her father had died nearly a decade ago. He'd gone on a merchant voyage across the sea and never returned. The letter that confirmed his ship had been lost, arrived just before her 12th birthday. Her mother had died even earlier. The scent of lavender and earth still lingering on her old clothes in the attic. But now, even those clothes were gone, taken and tailored into bodices and petticoats for her stepsisters. In the silence of the kitchen, she often heard things, not just the creak of the house or the occasional scurry of a rat, but voices, faint murmurs that hummed from the walls, from beneath the floorboards, from the very cinders she sat upon. She used to believe they were in her head, that grief had driven her into some soft madness, but they had grown louder over the years, more insistent and more intimate. "Do you want to be seen?" one had whispered once, late in the night, when the moon was high and blue over the gables. She hadn't responded, not then, but the voice had laughed, a low, cindery chuckle, and retreated into the flue-like smoke. Tonight, the house was unusually quiet. Her stepmother and sisters had left early for town, giggling about dresses and pearls and the upcoming ball. The entire kingdom buzzed with anticipation. Prince Alaric, heir to the throne, was finally choosing a bride, and every noble daughter was certain it would be her. Ella hadn't even asked if she could attend. She already knew the answer. Still, something in her stirred as she rinsed out the mop. Not hope, that had long since shriveled, but curiosity. Something had shifted in the air, a thickening, like the moments before a thunderstorm. That's when she heard it again. "Would you like to go?" She froze, dripping mop in hand. The voice this time came not from the walls, but from the fireplace, from the very heart of the ashes. Her pulse quickened. Who are you? A pause, then a friend, a watcher, one who sees what others overlook. I don't believe in magic, she whispered, not entirely sure she meant it. Another chuckle. You don't have to, but you were made for more than this. Child of soot, I can offer you a night, one night, a taste of what they've denied you. Her hands trembled. What's the price? Silence again. Then the answer floated through her like wind through cracks. Only what you've already lost. She didn't say yes, not aloud, but perhaps her silence was agreement enough. The hearth flared suddenly, sending a shower of sparks into the air. She stumbled back, shielding her face, but the heat wasn't painful. It was exhilarating. The flames danced with strange grace, forming shapes, wings, masks swirling skirts. Then, from within the fire, something stepped out. It wasn't a woman, not exactly. It was cloaked in shadow, its form constantly shifting, sometimes thin and regal, other times twisted and spindly, but its face was beautiful and terrible. "Hello, Ella," it said. Her knees weakened, but she didn't fall. "I can dress you in moonlight and bone," the figure said. "Give you glass not made by man's hands. You will shine in their world. You will be remembered. You will be seen." Ella's throat was dry. "And after?" "At midnight, it ends," the figure said, stepping closer. "Unless you claim what is yours." It reached out a hand, long-fingered and glowing faintly. She took it. The world spun. Shadows writhed around her feet, weaving into slippers. Smoke curled around her waist, coalescing into a shimmering gown, the colour of storm clouds. Her hair unbound itself, tumbling like river water down her back. When she looked into the soot-blackened mirror above the mantel, she didn't recognise the girl staring back, but she liked the way she looked. "Go," the figure said, voice like wind through dead trees. "But remember, when the clock strikes 12, the veil begins to thin. Make your choice before then." With a nod, Ella stepped out the front door, barefoot, then not, and into the night. A carriage waited, silent and riderless, shaped from twisted wood and vines, glowing softly under the moonlight. The horses that pulled it were bone white, their eyes dark as wells. She did not question their origin. The ride to the castle felt like a dream. Trees bent as she passed, bowing or recoiling. It was hard to tell. The sky seemed closer than usual, as if pressing down to watch her. When the castle gates loomed ahead, flanked by towering statues and wrought iron thorns, Ella felt no fear, only something close to hunger. Inside the ballroom, all eyes turned. The prince paused mid-sentence. The nobles halted their laughter. It was as if the room exhaled in awe. She descended the staircase, every step echoing like a spell. Prince Alaric was handsome in a storybook way, sharp-jawed and doe-eyed, but his smile faltered as she approached. There was something in her gaze, something that unsettled even royalty. They danced, Of course they did. That's what fairy tales promised. But as they spun beneath chandeliers that looked like frozen stars, Ella felt something crackling under her skin, a power that had nothing to do with beauty. The prince leaned close. "Who are you?" Ella smiled. "Someone you forgot." He blinked. "Have we met?" Her eyes gleamed. "Not yet." In the corner of the room, hidden in shadow, the figure from the fire watched and smiled. The ballroom shimmered, every golden wall and crystal detail glowing with an ethereal lustre. Music wove through the air like a spell, the notes somehow sharper, more urgent since Ella's arrival. As she danced with Prince Alaric, a hush had settled over the other guests. They watched with wide eyes, smiles frozen, not in delight, but something closer to apprehension. There was something about the girl in grey and silver, something not quite right. Alaric couldn't stop looking at her. He danced with dozens of women that night, some beautiful, some charming, all desperate for his attention. But this girl, she was different. Her gown shimmered like mist over a grave. Her slippers were too perfect, glass, yet they didn't reflect the light. And her eyes, there was something ancient in them, like a story long buried beneath dirt and time. "Have we truly never met?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Ella's lips curved. "Not in this form." The words chilled him, though he didn't understand why. He looked around the ballroom, at the courtiers whispering behind fans and sipping from crystal goblets. They were all staring at her too, not admiring, studying, like they weren't quite sure she was real. He forced a chuckle. "You're teasing me." Ella tilted her head. "Perhaps." She stepped away from him then, letting her fingers slip from his hand. Her touch lingered like smoke. He tried to follow, but she melted into the crowd, weaving past nobles and lords, slipping through the shadows at the edge of the dance floor, like she belonged more to them than the light. Something was wrong with the music now. It was faster, just a fraction, but enough to unsettle. The violinist's fingers moved too quickly, and the flutist's eyes were wide and unblinking. Even the chandeliers swayed slightly, though no wind stirred. Ella moved toward the staircase, toward the balcony that overlooked the courtyard. The night air met her like a greeting, crisp, cool, and full of hidden whispers. She wasn't alone. Standing in the far corner, half hidden behind a stone pillar, was a woman with a silver mask and hair like unspun thread. She stepped into the moonlight, revealing eyes the colour of dying embers. Ella didn't flinch. "I didn't expect to see you here." The masked woman smiled. "You think the spell is without watchers?" Ella turned to the railing, looking down at the hedged maze beyond the garden, where lanterns flickered like trapped fireflies. "It's working. He noticed me." "He noticed something," the figure replied, "but he doesn't see you. Not yet, and time is thinning." Ella turned slowly. "What happens if I wait too long?" The masked woman stepped forward, Then the veil lifts, and the truth bleeds through. Behind them, inside the ballroom, the laughter had thinned to murmurs. Several guests were staring at the mirrors that lined the walls, though not at themselves. The reflections didn't match. Couples dancing in the real world were standing still in the glass. Some looked afraid, some looked like corpses. Ella took a breath, but it wasn't fear she felt. It was certainty. Whatever this night truly was, whatever bargain she had accepted, it was giving her something she hadn't felt in years. Control. She had been a ghost in her own home for so long. The girl who served, the girl who scraped soot from tiles and went to sleep with empty lungs. But here she was something more, something people saw, something they couldn't look away from. The masked woman's eyes narrowed. "You're enjoying it too much." Ella's voice was calm. "Why shouldn't I?" "Because power has memory," the woman said softly. "It remembers where it came from, and it always wants to go home." Before Ella could respond, the distant clock tower tolled. One chime, then two. The sound echoed like thunder through the ballroom. The guests flinched. Several candles flickered out at once, and the air grew suddenly heavier. The music halted mid-note, the instruments dropping to silence. With a jarring finality, Prince Alaric emerged from the crowd, scanning for her. Where did she go? Ella turned from the balcony. Her time was narrowing. The masked woman stepped closer again. "Do you know what lies beneath this palace?" Ella shook her head. An older kingdom, one built of stone and sacrifice, the kind of kingdom where names had power and blood fed the soil. The veil between here and there has always been thin. That's why the magic still clings to this place. That's why you were drawn to it. Another chime. 3, the masked woman said. Alaric spotted Ella by the balcony and moved toward her. Faster this time. Urgency in every step. "Please, wait!" Ella descended the steps with practiced grace. Her gown didn't rustle, her slippers didn't clack. It was as if she was gliding. The guests parted for her, their expressions unreadable. Some looked fearful, others reverent. Alaric reached her at the base of the stairs. "Tell me your name, just your name." Ella hesitated, but before she could speak, the 4th chime rang. The chandeliers dimmed, shadows lengthened, and the glass floor beneath the ballroom darkened like water in a well. The masked woman was watching from above now, high in the gallery. "Time is bleeding," she whispered. Alaric took Ella's hand. "Come with me. Stay past midnight." But Ella looked down at the place where their hands touched. His warmth was real. His desperation was sincere, but none of it was for her. Not truly. She pulled her hand away gently. "I've already stayed too long." And with that, she turned and walked toward the exit, her pace unhurried. But with each step, the world warped. The mirrored walls began to drip, not crack, not shatter, but melt. Reflections slid down the glass like oil, revealing dark corridors behind the surfaces. Some guests turned away, others leaned in. A few disappeared entirely. The 5th chime rang, deeper than the others. Ella reached the castle gates. The carriage was waiting. Only now, its horses were taller, thinner. Shadows curled from their flanks. Their eyes glowed like coals. The coach door opened on its own. Inside, the seats were plush and crimson, but the walls pulsed faintly, like veins beneath skin. She paused, 1 foot on the step. From within the castle, she heard her name. Not Cinderella, not girl in grey, but her true name. Ella. It was Alaric's voice, and for a moment, just one fragile moment, she hesitated. But then the 6th chime rang, and the doors closed. The carriage lurched forward, hooves striking stone like thunder. The path it followed wasn't the same one it came by. Trees arched tighter overhead. The moon flickered like a dying bulb. And deep in the woods, something was waiting, watching, whispering her name in voices she almost remembered. The carriage rolled into a forest, wrapped in fog. The moon was pale above, veiled by streaks of mist that curled like fingers around tree limbs. The trees themselves were impossibly tall and brittle, their bark blackened and knotted, with hollows shaped like screaming mouths. Ella sat alone inside, the red velvet seat cool beneath her hands. She didn't recognize the path they followed. It no longer resembled the roads of the kingdom. This route pulsed with something older. The carriage moved without driver or whip, pulled by horses whose bodies seemed half shadow. As they galloped, the wheels made no sound, and even the wind outside grew still, as though holding its breath. A voice stirred beside her. "You almost stayed too long," said the masked woman, materializing across from Ella in the seat opposite her. Her silver mask glinted faintly, though her body gave off no reflection in the window pane beside her. "I know," Ella said quietly. "Do you remember what happens when the final bell tolls?" Ella shook her head, though something in her stomach twisted. A memory, a warning. "Reality collapses," the woman said. "Not all at once, just enough. The glamour fades, and so does the barrier." Ella looked out the window again. The forest had changed. The trees were closer now, leaning inward, listening. "Where are we going?" The woman didn't answer at first. She reached out and placed something in Ella's lap, a small bundle wrapped in grey linen. Ella hesitated before unwrapping it. Inside was a bone, slender, smooth, and ivory white, a finger bone. She realized, a child's. "What is this?" she whispered. "A relic, a reminder. You will need it soon." The carriage slowed. They had arrived. Outside stood a house, or what remained of one. It was a ruin, leaning crookedly at the forest's edge. Half its roof had collapsed. Ivy strangled the chimney, and broken panes of glass glittered like teeth in the windows. The air around it felt colder than the rest of the forest. Dead leaves lay in thick drifts across the ground, though no wind disturbed them. Ella stepped out. The moment her foot touched the earth, the door creaked open. Inside, The smell hit her, damp wood, mould, and something older, like dust, layered with grief. She stepped through the threshold. This place, it was familiar, not from the palace, not from her stepmother's home, from before. The masked woman appeared beside her, now barefoot, her toes silent on the warped floorboards. This is the beginning. Ella turned slowly in place. The walls bore old markings, symbols carved in childlike scrawl, some of them smeared or bleeding into each other. A cracked mirror leaned crookedly against the far wall. In its glass, Ella saw something move behind her, but when she turned, the room was empty. "This place was your mother's," the woman whispered, "before it was taken." Ella's breath caught. She stared at the faded mural above the fireplace. Two figures, hand in hand, a woman in white, her hair long and silver, a child in grey, with eyes like glass. "Taken by who?" she asked. The masked woman didn't answer. A new sound filled the house, a soft scraping, like nails dragging across wood. Ella turned toward the stairs. Something was moving up there. She climbed slowly. Each step groaned under her weight, as though reluctant to remember. The upper hallway was narrow, the walls closer together than seemed possible, pulsing with shadows. A door at the end creaked open just a fraction. She approached, the finger bone still clutched in her hand. Inside, the room was a cradle, and in it, something stirred. The bundle of cloth twitched. The air thickened. Ella's steps faltered, but she moved forward. Inside the cradle was no baby. Instead, there was a bundle of twigs and soot, woven around a heart-shaped stone that beat faintly, like it remembered once being alive. Ella stared. Behind her, the masked woman spoke softly. "When your mother died, she left something behind, something hidden, but your stepmother found it, claimed it, changed it." "What is this?" Ella whispered, eyes fixed on the heart. "A promise," the woman said, "and a curse." Suddenly, the floor beneath them groaned. A shape surged from the shadows, a woman with hollow eyes and blackened teeth, her hair a snarl of cobwebs. She lunged for Ella with clawed hands, mouth open in a scream that never left her throat. Ella didn't move. She lifted the finger bone and held it out. The woman halted inches away, mouth gaping. Her hands trembled. She looked at the bone and began to sob. Not rage, not pain, grief. She melted into ash, drifting to the floor like dust in sunlight. Ella turned back to the cradle. The heart was beating faster now. The masked woman stepped beside her. "Take it." Ella reached out, and as her fingers closed around the heart, her vision blurred. Flash! She saw her mother, pale and beautiful, standing in this very room, singing to the cradle, but her eyes were sad. Flash! She saw her stepmother, digging through the floorboards, pulling out the heart with greedy hands, her face twisted with hunger. Flash! She saw herself, young, silent, sweeping ash from these same floors, never knowing what was buried beneath. Then the vision faded. Ella stood in the cradle room again, heart in hand. The masked woman nodded. "Now you're ready." Behind them the house was dissolving. The walls peeled like paper, revealing the forest again. Black trees and whispering winds. The glamour was lifting. It was nearly midnight. The chimes had reached 10. Ella stepped outside. The carriage was gone. Only the path remained, lit now by lanterns that hovered in the air, bobbing gently like will-o'-the-wisps. She followed them. As she walked, her gown changed. The silver dimmed, the glass slippers cracked, then reformed, this time from bone, not crystal. Her hair loosened, flowing around her shoulders in waves the colour of smoke. The final trial was waiting. At the path's end stood the palace again, but it was different, twisted. The towers bent at odd angles. The windows flickered with firelight. Though no smoke rose from the chimneys, the front gate was open, and inside was a throne, but no prince, only a mirror, large, tall, and framed in black iron. Ella approached. The reflection was not hers. It was the girl she had been, the one covered in soot, eyes dull, lips bitten raw. She looked back at Ella with a mixture of fear and longing. Then she smiled, a single, eerie smile, and shattered. Behind the glass stood a door. Beyond it, the final bell and the truth. Ella stood frozen before the shattered mirror, shards glinting in the moonlight that streamed through the twisted palace windows. The smile of her reflected self echoed inside her mind like a whisper from a forgotten nightmare. She felt the cold seeping deeper into her bones. Beyond the broken glass lay the door, the threshold to whatever waited for her in the final bell's toll. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, as if trying to escape her chest. The air grew thick with silence, broken only by the distant tolling, slow and deliberate. With trembling hands, Ella reached out to the door. It swung open silently, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into darkness. Shadows curled at its edges, alive with whispered voices she could almost understand. Laughter, cries, threats. A faint light glowed below, flickering like a candle, fighting the wind. She hesitated. The masked woman appeared beside her again, her voice soft, almost a caress. "This is where the past waits, where the truth hides beneath the glamour." Ella swallowed her fear and stepped down. The air grew colder the deeper she went, the walls narrowing until she had to walk sideways, brushing against stone damp with age. The faint light came from a room at the bottom, a chamber unlike any she'd seen before. It pulsed with an eerie glow, pale blue and shifting, like moonlight caught in water. Inside, the room was filled with hundreds of mirrors, some cracked, others perfectly clear, all reflecting 1,000 versions of herself. Each mirror showed a different story. A girl trapped in ashes, a woman in a burning dress, a child lost in the woods. One mirror pulsed brighter than the rest. Ella stepped forward. The reflection inside was no longer herself. It was the stepmother, her face twisted in rage, eyes burning with dark magic. The stepmother's mouth moved silently. Ella listened closely. The silence thickened. Then the voice came, a whisper carried on the chill wind. "You will never be free." Ella's breath hitched. The stepmother's image raised a hand, pointing to the ground. There, beneath the mirrors, a trapdoor cracked open, revealing a pit filled with shadowy figures, twisted shapes of servants and children, trapped in eternal torment. Ella recognized them, faces from whispered village rumours, children who had vanished without trace, servants who had disappeared overnight. The stepmother's curse. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind Ella, clear, ringing, strong. "Ella!" She spun to see a boy standing in the doorway, a boy with eyes like storm clouds and hair the colour of autumn leaves. He stepped forward, his presence a light in the darkness. "I'm here to help," he said. Ella's heart faltered. She wanted to believe. The boy smiled, but there was something haunted beneath it, a shadow she couldn't place. Together, they approached the pit. The trapped souls reached out, whispering names, begging for release. The boy knelt beside the pit and touched the shadows. "They need the heart," he said. Ella clutched the bone-white heart tighter. "Take it," he urged. "You are the key." Fear twisted inside her, but determination won. She lowered the heart into the pit. A scream echoed through the chamber, a sound that shattered glass and chilled the soul. Light burst forth, engulfing the room in a storm of pale flames. The trapped shadows writhed and then dissolved into light, freed at last. Ella and the boy were bathed in the glow. When it faded, the mirrors were gone. Only the final door remained. The boy turned to her, eyes darkening. "Are you ready?" Ella nodded. The door opened onto a courtyard, bathed in moonlight, where the palace once stood proud. Now it was silent and cold. A figure waited there, the prince, but not as she remembered. His eyes were empty, and his smile was a mask. "You've come," he said. Ella felt the truth settle in her bones. The glamour was over, the curse was broken, but the cost was hers alone. The final bell tolled. The final bell tolled through the darkened courtyard, its sound a mournful echo that rippled like a ghostly dirge across the cold stone walls. Ella's heart thudded so loudly it seemed to fill the entire palace, drowning out all other sounds. The whisper of wind through broken windows, the faint rustle of dying leaves, even the distant cries of night birds. Everything was swallowed by the weight of that bell, that moment, and the terrible truth that had crept over her like a suffocating fog. The prince's face was close now, too close. His eyes, once so warm and bright, were now sunken and empty, reflecting nothing but a hollow hunger. His smile, if it could even be called that, stretched too wide, a grotesque mask of teeth, sharp as shattered glass, catching the flickering torchlight. You think it's over, he whispered, voice low and cruel, like the rustle of dead leaves in a graveyard. You think the curse is broken, but you are part of it now, forever bound. Ella's breath hitched as a cold tendril of fear snaked down her spine. The heart in her hand pulsed faintly, a fragile warmth that struggled against the encroaching darkness, swirling like a living shadow around the prince. The air thickened, charged with a malevolent energy that prickled the skin and turned the night air to ice. From the prince's form, tendrils of shadow unfurled, smoke-like and sinuous, reaching toward her, caressing her with cold fingers that promised oblivion. She stumbled back, the heart feeling heavier, as though burdened by the weight of generations of pain and sorrow. Voices rose from the darkness, layered like a chorus of despair, whispers that slithered into her mind, clawing at her resolve. Forever lost, forever bound. Ella's vision blurred with tears, the cold pressing in until it felt like her lungs would shatter. She fell to her knees, clutching the heart close to her chest, desperately drawing strength from its faint glow. Then, like a beacon through the night, a light pierced the darkness, a sudden, soft glow from the boy who had appeared in the courtyard moments before, the same boy who had quietly watched from the shadows. His eyes burned with fierce determination, and without hesitation, he reached out, gripping Ella's trembling hand. "Don't give in," he urged, voice steady despite the fear in his own eyes. "You are stronger than this. You always were." Ella's fingers tightened around his, drawing courage from his presence. The warmth of the heart in her palm blossomed into a steady flame, pushing back the shadows inch by inch. The cold tendrils recoiled, hissing like wounded serpents, fracturing and dissipating into thin air. The prince staggered back, snarling, his monstrous smile cracking as the light forced its way through his corrupted form. Ella forced herself upright, stepping forward into the clearing with newfound resolve. She raised the heart high, its glow bathing the courtyard in pure blinding light. "With this," she said, voice ringing clear and unwavering, "I bind you. No longer will you haunt the living." The light surged, engulfing the prince in a cocoon of brilliance. His agonized scream shattered the stillness, a sound so raw and terrible it seemed to tear at the very fabric of the night. Shadows writhed and twisted, clinging to his form, but the light consumed them all. His shape convulsed, distorting into a grotesque nightmare before collapsing to the cold stone floor, a broken figure stripped of power and will. Ella fell to her knees, the sudden silence deafening in its completeness. The moon, once hidden behind storm clouds, emerged again, casting a serene silver glow. that softened the harsh edges of the ruined palace. The boy knelt beside her, breathing ragged but relieved. "It's over," he whispered, though his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Ella clutched the heart, now steady and warm. She knew this was but a temporary reprieve. The darkness had been driven back, not destroyed. The curse lingered, an unseen weight pressing on her soul, a shadow waiting patiently for the moment to return. She looked out at the shattered remnants of the palace. Its grandeur crumbled to dust and echoes, the cold wind carrying whispers of ancient pain. Her journey was far from finished, but for tonight, at least, there was peace. The dawn crept slowly over the horizon, spilling pale light across the shattered remains of the once grand palace. The sky was a canvas of bruised purples and cold blues, the last whispers of night retreating as the sun began its climb. But even as morning broke, the heavy silence lingered like a shroud, thick and unyielding. Ella stood among the ruins, her breath visible in the chilly air. The heart she still held pulsed steadily, its faint glow a reminder of the fragile victory they'd won. But her eyes were drawn to the distant woods, beyond the palace grounds, where shadows twisted unnaturally beneath the emerging light. The boy, who had silently followed her through the dark hours, remained close. He was no ordinary child. She had learned that much in the night's eerie encounters. His gaze was sharp, eyes flickering with an otherworldly knowledge, as if he belonged more to the shadows than the daylight. "We can't stay here," he said softly. "The darkness will return if we don't find its source. The curse isn't just a single evil. It's a wound, deep and festering." Ella nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle heavily in her chest. The palace, the prince, the cursed heart, all were pieces of a larger, darker tapestry. She was no longer just a victim or a pawn. Now she was a seeker of truths, buried beneath layers of lies and ancient magic. They moved cautiously through the overgrown gardens, once manicured and full of life, now wild and tangled, as if nature itself recoiled from the palace's decay. Twisted vines crept along cracked fountains and toppled statues, their stone faces eroded into grotesque masks of despair. Ella's footsteps faltered when they reached the old well at the garden's centre. It gaped like a dark mouth, swallowing the faint morning light. Stories whispered of the well's ancient powers, how it had been a gateway, a threshold between worlds. She peered into the depths, a chill crawling up her spine as a faint shimmer danced in the darkness below. The boy placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is where it began," he said, "where the curse took root." Suddenly, the air thickened. The soft rustling of leaves was swallowed by an unnatural stillness. A whisper curled around them, faint but unmistakable. Soft voices murmuring in a language older than memory. Ella's heart quickened, the pulse in her hand syncing with the strange rhythm. From the well's depths, a shadow stirred, swirling like smoke in a slow, deliberate dance. The boy stepped forward, raising an ancient charm, a pendant etched with runes glowing faintly with protective light. "We have to face it," he said, voice steady but strained. "To heal the wound, the darkness must be confronted." Ella drew a shaky breath, tightening her grip on the heart. The warmth in her palm was a beacon against the creeping cold that seeped from the well. As the first tendrils of shadow reached upward, twisting toward the light, Ella stepped forward with the boy at her side, ready to face the unseen horror that had haunted the palace and cursed her life. This was no longer a tale of lost innocence or broken promises. It was a battle for the very soul of the kingdom, and she would not back down. The shadows spiraled upward from the well like living smoke, writhing and curling with a sinister grace. They seemed to reach for the fading light, hungry for the warmth Ella carried in her hand. The ancient curse was no longer hidden. It had taken form, dark and terrible, and now it demanded to be faced. Ella tightened her fingers around the glowing heart, feeling its pulse steady against the growing chill. The boy beside her held the charm high, the runes shimmering brighter with a fierce protective light that cut through the darkness like a beacon. A voice echoed from the depths, a rasping, ancient whisper that twisted words into threats and promises both. It spoke of betrayal, of vengeance, and of a power older than any mortal could comprehend. The curse was born from pain and jealousy, from shadows cast by those forgotten by time. Ella swallowed hard, but she did not waver. She stepped forward, voice steady despite the cold tightening in her chest. "I will end this," she declared, her words carrying across the stillness like a vow. The darkness recoiled at her defiance, hissing like a wounded beast, but the boy's charm flared brighter, binding the shadow tendrils, pulling them back toward the well. With a surge of will, Ella pressed the glowing heart against the cracked stone edge of the well. A sharp pulse radiated outward, a wave of warmth that chased away the cold fingers of shadow. The whispers grew faint, then silent, as the ancient magic unravelled, untangling the curse that had gripped the palace for so long. For a moment there was only silence, thick and profound. Then, as the first true rays of sunlight pierced the morning sky, the shadows dissolved completely, leaving behind a quiet calm that felt almost sacred. Ella's heart slowed, its glow softening into a gentle light that warmed her palm. The boy lowered the charm, his eyes bright with relief. "The curse is broken," he said quietly, "but its memory remains, a reminder that even the darkest shadows can be brought into the light." Ella looked toward the horizon, where the ruined palace now seemed less a place of despair and more a monument to resilience and hope. The past had been harsh and cruel, but the future was hers to shape. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. The tale of Cinderella was no longer just a story of loss and hardship. It was a story of courage, of facing the darkness within and without, and emerging stronger. And as the sun climbed higher, bathing the land in golden light, Ella stepped forward, ready to embrace the life that awaited her beyond the shadows.